Hello everyone, in this video I'm going to show you how to build a super versatile mastering chain in Cubase using only stock plugins. A chain that you can adapt to any master. Let's get started. Choosing all the different processes when it comes to mastering like compression, EQ, limiting, saturation, all these things will vary depending on the song. There's no secret recipe, there's no perfect preset that will make your master sound great. But what we can do in Cubase is we can create a chain that we can adapt to pretty much any mastering situation. So that's what I've done here, and that's what I'm going to show you today. I have this track right here, and as you can see, I've laid down my project in Cubase so that it makes sense when mastering. I have a reference track here so we can compare to the original one, or we can compare to an already released track. If you want to learn how to do A/B comparisons in Cubase using only control room, let us know in the comments down below, and maybe we will make a video about it. Now, as you can see, I have my reference track, I have my mix right here, I have a parallel compressor channel. I'm going to explain what it is. Then I have a master bus and then my stereo out, and also a master VCA fader. So let me start explaining what each one of these things does, right? So let's open the mixer and let me show you how things work. As you can see, I have my mix right here, and my mix, I send it to a parallel compressor using an FX channel. And as you can see, I'm sending this to this compressor here, pre-fader, which means that no matter if I move this fader here to change the level of my mix, this compressor is still going to compress the same amount because it doesn't take into account the fader. Now, as you can see, I have a compressor here, and this is quite a drastic compressor. Now, this whole arrangement here, you can save it as a template. So I can go File, and save as a template. And as you can see here, I can create a new preset and save this as a project template, which is great. So as you can see, I have a very short attack, a relatively fast release, and I have my analysis to RMS. I find that this works better in this kind of situation because the compressor, I want it to be super fast in terms of attack, but the release, I might change it depending on the track, the tempo, and how it feels. So let's have a listen. So I want to make sure that it just dances nicely with the tempo of the song, with the drums, and it gives me a nice elevated feeling. Now, as you can see, my ratio is high, and now I can introduce this to my original mix. One thing that you will find that this helps a lot is breakdowns or sections in the song that are a little bit more empty. For example, if I go here, you will see that if I add the parallel compressor, I'm going to have a bigger breakdown. Okay, let's have a listen. So we already solve a big problem where the breakdowns might sound a little bit less loud, a little bit more empty. And of course, you can automate this parallel compressor here. So you can add it whenever you need it. It doesn't have to be all the way up, all the way, but I would just use it tastefully. So let's jump to the next section, which is my master bus. As you can see, I have a master VCA fader here so that I can do exactly this. So I can just go here, and I'm controlling both my mix and the parallel compressor at the same time, in case I want to drive this chain that we're going to check right now in the right amount. So as you can see, I have quite a few plugins right here. Now, I want to say from the very beginning, you don't need to use all these plugins that I'm going to show you. You need to just figure out what you need to do for each master, and you need to decide which of these processors you need to use. But I want to show you something that's very important. If you want to save this plugin chain, you can go here, click on this icon, and then just save this FX plugin chain. In my case, if I want to reload it, I can just go load, and my plugin chain is called Dom All-in-One Mastering. So the first plugin that we have is Frequency, and this is a corrective EQ, right? In this case, I'm trying to make sure that I tackle any problems that maybe the mix has, or maybe help the mix where it's lacking, okay? So in this case, let me show you what I have for this specific track. I have a little bit of low mids on the sides, because frequency EQ is a mid-side EQ. You can turn it to mid-side and you can process the mid signal to the side signal, so the stereo information differently. What I also have here is a different filter for the mid and side channels. So as you can see, I have a filter right here, which is for the mids. That's way lower. This is at 40 Hertz. And I have another filter here, which is at 91 Hertz, and this is for the sides. So let's have a listen. So what I'm doing here basically is I'm cleaning up the sides from any low-end rumble that might drive my compressors and limiters crazy along the way. This is a very good practice, especially if you know that you don't have any useful low-end information in your sub area. So this is something that I do. Then something that you might find useful if you have a mix that's lacking low-end is using a resonant filter when it comes to the mids. So as you can see here, I have a little bit of resonance with the Q, and I can just boost it a little bit. This will give you a nice body when it comes to your sub bass. So let me show you. This mix doesn't need it, but I want to show you what you can do. So this makes a huge difference. Obviously, you have to be careful with this. Don't overdo it. But if your mix doesn't have enough low end or the kick drum is weak, this might be a good way to beef it up a little bit. Another thing that I'm doing here is I'm adding a little bit of mid-range with this band. So I'm adding a little bit of mid-range where the vocals are. So that's in the center. So I'm using the mid band here, and I'm adding a little bit of width by boosting the top end for the sides. So you will hear that the difference is subtle, and this is going to be a recurring thing when it comes to what we're going to do today, because you don't want to add too much of any one of these plugins, because we want to make sure that we add the right ingredients to get to the final result. Okay, so we don't want to add too much EQ or too much compression. So let me go to the next plugin, and the next plugin is a compressor. Now, this is a compressor that I would use as a VCA kind of compressor. So imagine an SSL or something like this. And these are the settings that I use. So 4:1 ratio, I'm probably going to use around 30 milliseconds of attack, and the release, I'm going to check it and see how it sounds. So let me overdo it so that you can hear how it sounds. And in this case, I'm going to just barely touch the needle, okay? I just want this to bring the mix together. I don't want to hear the compression effect right here. In case we are looking for a different sound, we have an alternative. So I'm following this with a multiband compressor. So this is actually something that I would suggest that you use it when there's a need for it. So this is the Cubase stock multiband compressor. And with this plugin, I can compress every band separately. So I have the low mids, high mids, and highs. And this multiband compressor can give us a very, very exciting sound. Let me show you. So it definitely makes the sound more exciting. It definitely makes this low end be more assertive. So if you think that this is the sound you're going for, this gives you a very modern sound, right? So ever so slightly start touching the needle when you think it's needed. For the attack, I tend to go around 30 milliseconds. And for the release, for this specific plugin, I like to leave it to auto. It sounds really, really nice in mastering situations. Now we're going to decide which one of these two compressors we're going to use. Sometimes you might want to use both, but be careful. Don't over compress your mixes. As a general rule, it doesn't sound very good. And now I'm going to show you something else that's extremely powerful in Cubase, and this is a really special plugin. And this is the multiband envelope shaper. This plugin, I have it in the chain just in case I receive a mix that doesn't have enough punch, it doesn't have enough transients, and I want to recover some of the transient information so that we can make a mix and a master more punchy. So let me show you what I've done here in this case, and you will be able to hear the difference. So as you can hear, I can bring out those transients on the hi-hats, the snares, the kick drum. It's very tempting, it sounds really good, but be careful not to overdo it, okay? If a mix is completely flat, then you can go to town with it and start adding a little bit of punch. But if a mix is already punchy, if you add too much of this, you might end up in a situation where you can't make the master really loud. After this, I'm following with the frequency 2 EQ, and in this case, this is an additive EQ, so I'm adding stuff. And the next plugin is again a secret weapon in Cubase. It's Quadrafuzz 2, and this plugin can give you a lot of richness to your sound. Now, this is another plugin that if your mix suffers in the low end, then this plugin can come to the rescue. What I like to do for this plugin is I like to go for the tube algorithm for the low end and tape for the rest of the bands. Now, the tube algorithm for the low end really gives you a super big low end. It sounds almost like a subharmonic exciter, and I really like what it does. So let me show you how it sounds with and without. Now, as you can tell, this changes everything, right? So basically the mix sounds way bigger, way fuller. But like I said before, try and be mindful with the amount of ingredients. So in this case, what I like to do is I like to turn the mix down, and I like to just introduce as much as I need. And I think if I have it all the way to 100%, this would be over the top. Now, one thing that I want to show you before I leave Quadrafuzz is that it's a very good widener. So as you can see right here, I'm just using this width control in the upper mid-range to add a little bit of width to the mix. And if you want, you can also make sure that the width in the low end is all the way to 0. The next one is something that I would use in conjunction with Quadrafuzz, or maybe you need to decide which one of the two you're going to use. The next plugin, which is Magneto Mark II. This can give you a great tape sound to your master. So this will give you a little bit more low end. You can also have some silky highs right there. The great thing that I like about Magneto is that you can add a little bit of sheen to a master using the high frequency adjust right here. Make sure you turn it on. Or if you have a mix that's overly bright, it's a great way to make it smoother without adding an EQ that is going to make things dull. In this case, I'm going to keep Quadrafuzz and I'm not going to use Magneto. These are decisions that you need to make depending on the mix that you're working on and of course the sound that you're looking for. So I'm going to go to the next plugin, and this is the Imager. This plugin allows you to make things wide, but again, I think I'm going to use just a little bit of width in the high mids. Just a tiny bit of width, okay? I'm not adding too much because then it's going to make the mix sound unstable. Moving on, I have some very interesting plugins to show you. We have Squasher. This is a plugin that's extremely powerful. It can make things extremely loud, and it can give you a sound that pretty much no other plugin can give you. What I would say though is you need to make sure that you use it right. So if you're looking for this in-your-face loudness, then this is the plugin for you. Let me show you what it does on this mix. As you can tell, it's an impressive plugin. What I would say as a rule of thumb for mastering when you're using Squasher is have the attack a little bit open. So again, 30 milliseconds is a good start. The release, it depends on the track. In this case, I have it pretty fast. I add a little bit of drive to each one of the bands, and then I readjust the output accordingly. Now, this plugin also has a mix control. So if you want to adjust a little bit of that effect to your master, it allows you to do this. If you pay attention, we added all these different plugins, but if you check my master meter right here, you will see that I'm not peaking. I have a healthy headroom still, and now I can start moving on to the last ingredients so that I can raise the loudness. Now, another plugin that I want to show you, that is the only plugin that I'm going to show you today that is not a Cubase stock plugin, is Fire the Clip. And this I would use to raise the loudness without adding a limiter and making the sound of my master sound compressed or over limited. So here are the settings that I like to use for mastering for this plugin. Let's have a listen. And again, like I said, make sure that whatever you do makes sense for your track. So this is, for me, already too loud, okay? I'm adding a little bit of clipping right there to push the sound a little bit more. And now I can start finalizing. I'm going to follow this with the Razor plugin that we have in Cubase. This is a brand new limiter. And what I like to do at this stage is add the aggressive release. And I'm going to start driving it. And as you can see, I'm barely limiting 2 to 3 dBs maximum, but we already have a good ground to build upon. So once I hit my Razor limiter, I don't have to add 10 dBs of gain. I just add 1.7 dBs and I'm already at a good place. Then, if I want even more loudness, I can follow this up with the maximizer, okay? This I would use in modern mode, and I'm going to adjust the release so that it flows with the track. I just wanna keep it real. I don't want another dream. Going through motions like flying. And as you can see, I'm limiting in stages. I don't have one limiter limiting 10 dBs. I have several limiters limiting 1 dB or 2 dBs. And this is a great thing that you can do if you build a chain like this. See that this master bus goes to my stereo out, and this is where I have the final touches. In this case, I have another Razor limiter, but the only difference this time is that I have the release set to auto and fast. And at this stage, I'm adding the last bits of loudness to my track. The only thing that comes after this is the Lin Diver plugin, the Lin 1 Diver. And this I set it to 24-bit, which is going to be our output bit depth. Trust me, it's a good idea to have a divering plugin at the end of your master. So let's listen to what we have up to now. So just to give the original mix a chance, I'm going to add a Razor plugin to the original mix. And then what I do is I push it up until it still sounds okay and not too crushed. And then I compare it to the mastered version. Let's compare this limited version to the mastering that we did up to this point. And as you can see, the properly mastered version with the chain sounds louder, it sounds more punchy, the kick drums and the snares have more attack, and this is because we didn't just slap a limiter at the end of our mastering chain. So we worked our way to the limiter. That's the most important thing. So there you go, this is a mastering chain. You can adapt to any track you're working on. Just make sure that you decide which plugins to use and which you're not gonna use depending on the music you are going to master. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.